Tēnā tātou katoa. Thanks for coming. The subject of my PhD research was the construction operator wellbeing in Aotearoa, New Zealand's logging industry. And the purpose of this presentation is to review what I found through that research. And to do that, I'm going to give you a bit of context first and an outline how we went about the research, and then I'm going to go through the key processes that provide us with an explanation of wellbeing within this group of kaimahi. And I'll finish by covering some of the implications I think there are from the findings. So the need for this research rests on two trends happening within our business environment. Firstly, increasing employee productivity associated with mechanisation produces an interesting paradox. While the number of employees has decreased slightly, the impact of each employee has increased massively over the last few years as the level of output has increased while the level of employees has remained the same, pretty much the same. That means the risk attached to each remaining worker is going up, and it will continue to do that right up until a fully autonomous logging system is a commercial reality. Retention and recruitment of operators is therefore a significant increasing business risk. We need an operating environment that makes working in the logging industry as an operator an attractive proposition. The second trend is that awareness of the risks and costs of mental illness within the wider body of occupational illness has been increasing over the last 5 years, to the point where WorkSafe are pivoting towards occupational disease prevention as their primary focus. That's because the number of weeks lost to occupational illness is 10 to 15 times the number of work weeks lost to acute workplace injury. Workplace intend to use the Health and Safety of the Work Act to promote the prevention of occupational disease in the same way they have been promoting the prevention of acute injury through the hierarchy of controls. However, this presents something of a difficulty for the businesses at this point in time. 80% of our health resources are aimed at either interrupting the progress of an illness or the recovery from an illness. That's either the ambulance at the top of the cliff or the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. But the goal is to get rid of the ambulance. And the responsibility and the potential for that sits totally within the control of the business. Wherever ambulances are, there is significant harm. So the only ethical position a business can take is to eliminate the need for any ambulances at all. So we have an increasingly valuable workforce, even if it is smaller, and an increasingly risky regulatory environment. Responding to those trends requires us to understand how wellbeing is constructed by machine operators in logging workplaces. So these findings are based on the analysis of 20 intensive interviews with machine operators working in 3 rohi within the motu. Those regions were chosen to represent the range of working conditions within the industry. Recruitment of participants was mainly through the logging whānau, the network, and where we got quite a bit of buy-in to the work I was trying to do. That meant we were able to spread the interviews across a lot of forest owners and contractors. Some participants even approached me directly through the advertising and publicity that I had undertaken. So we also got a good spread of participants across the different operator roles. The interviews used a conversational approach to getting data about key incidents within an operator's life. So questions like, how did you get into logging? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Tell me about a stressful incident you've experienced. What is the most stressful thing you have ever faced in your life? And what advice would you give to a young operator starting out in how to look after themselves? Those are all questions aimed at generating not just incidents that either enhanced wellbeing or detracted from wellbeing, but also what those incidents meant to the participants. And that gave us a set of stories which you could break down into snippets with common meanings. And those common meanings could be used as a source of a code or a label. And once we had codes, we could then group them into concepts or categories according to meanings that were related in some way. And equally, we could identify the relationships that existed between the categories. And after doing a few iterations of that, we had a process map that explained the construction of wellbeing by the participants. So let's start at the end of the process. What does wellbeing mean to an operator? That can be explained as a spectrum between stress at one end and wellness at the other. When asked to describe incidents they considered stressful, participants consistently referred to incidents that resulted in working longer hours, generating unacceptable levels of fatigue. That was also the aspect of logging that was most disliked by the participants. One operator even went so far as to express surprise that operating a machine had left him more tired than anything he had done working manually or physically on the ground. The participants also noted some of the impacts of that fatigue, things like unhealthy lifestyle choices, comfort eating, things that resulted in physical health disorders such as diabetes and eczema. One operator told me that he had lost 8 kilos in 10 months through stress he'd experienced on the job. He experienced there was experiences of conflict at work and in the home. And then there was talk about managing stress by quitting crews or overcoming stress by quitting crews and or actually leaving logging altogether. Fortunately, some of the participants spoke about stress being something they had experienced in the past, but were less likely to experience now. And that gave us a chance to talk about what was different now, not now as well-being, as wellness. Like stress, wellness was something that came down to the time on the job. Wellness was a function of okay hours. That meant they didn't lose, they could participate in family and its activities, not just through having a better balance of time, but also through not having time taken in recovering from the fatigue they'd experienced on the job. Interestingly, though, it wasn't just about stuff outside work that inspired these guys. There was time to do things differently at work. They could plan the way that they were going to do the work, something that was particularly important for tethered fellow operators and fleeting and loading operators. And with that time balance came a number of experiences considered important by the operators. What these wellbeing elements reflect is that this is happening to a group of mostly men who share similar life experiences, life events, and a social discourse. As a result, their sense of self and belonging is based on a shared way of being in the world that guides their actions, adaptations, attitudes, beliefs, and tastes. The data show that the participants came into logging with a preference to see the world in purely physical terms, and less so in other ways of experiencing reality, such as mental, spiritual, or emotional. They saw life as a battle against the elements. And because of the risks involved, they wanted to be in total control of their own performance and not at risk from the performances of others. They saw themselves as a unique and identifiable group to which they could belong. What is well-being to them reflects these normative ways of seeing the world and acting within it. It's also what attracts them to logging. The pressure to produce is the challenge they are looking to prove themselves against. Standing within the group is based on ability to meet that challenge, and because work is involved, it is their means of getting access to the resources required to establish standing within a wider society. Given that operators share this valued way of being in the world, then stress will be a function of anything that gets in the way of achieving the norms of that identity. So that's firstly and most importantly, anything that gets in the way of production. As the rewards for logging are all generated through uplift or throughput, then anything that stops the flow of wood is a threat to the logging identity. That's why, regardless of target, there is a sense of pressure in a logging crew. Their performance is being measured minute by minute through the loads uplifted, the quality of the logs being cut, through the wait times at each workstation. And the biggest judges are themselves. These guys love logging because there is a sense that nobody is looking over their shoulder telling them what to do and how to do it. And they have to earn their way up the ladder through a prescribed set of prescribed rite of passage. Something their sense of self-reliance values. So anything that gives the opposite impression, like keeping the target secret, or an operator getting a seat in the machine without having done work on the ground, erodes that sense of control, influence, and certainty that if I do this, then I'll get that. Finally, anything that gets in the way of their ability to provide gets in the way of their sense of social position. If they're not working, they can't be the somebody they're trying to be, financially, socially, and culturally. So when we're faced with a problem around wellbeing, though, when we're looking to change the environment to increase the chances that operators will experience wellness rather than stress, these threats are not the things we're looking to change. These are the challenges that attract this group of people to logging. As such, they can be equally be the source of wellness as they are the source of stress. Take them away, and the job would not be anywhere near as attractive. So the balance between stress and wellness is not really about the demands that loggers are exposed to, as interesting as they are. It is actually about whether or not they have the resources required to meet those challenges. So the question is, can these people achieve this sense of identity they are after, despite the obstacles they face? And the answer to that question comes down to the access to the resources required to meet the challenge. So the resources I'm talking about are things like objects such as logging machinery. They're conditions that, like effective working relationships or your seniority position in the crew. They're personal resources like your own skills. And they are your energy resources that allow you to do the work, such as your physical capacity and your credibility with your co-workers. Now, with fatigue being a key driver of stressful experiences, then which resources form the basis of any coping response determines whether wellbeing is negatively or positively impacted in those resourcing decisions. And on that basis, we can overcome obstacles to production, income insecurity, or power and influence through a number of methods. We can use operator time, more operator time. We can change conditions in the workplace or home by either building a tight-knit crew, as one operator called it, or adapting home life to longer work hours so that the pressure from home is less. Or we can add more physical resources in the form of machinery, skids, a bigger skid, or more trucks. Now, the easiest of those options is to increase operator hours. However, there are limits to operator energy. Exceed those limits and we end up with stressed operators. So not all coping responses increase the potential for wellness. One in particular will increase the potential for stress. That one, increasing the hours of work, will ultimately be detrimental for health if it happens on a chronic basis. The tricky thing here, though, is that this is a response that will fit well with the operator's predispositions. Operators are, by and large, rewarded in other ways for working longer hours. As hourly wage workers, they are likely to end up with more money as a result of working longer hours. One operator referred to it as, I work 3 weeks in every 2 to make the money I make. As their effort is no longer determined by physical strength, but more by mental stamina, working longer hours is now the proxy for hard work. And being known as a hard worker enhances your standing within the fraternity. So left to their own devices, operators will seek to live with the problem. Equally though, however, if the tools are made available to achieve production expectations within healthy work hours, the operator norms of self-reliance and competence will ensure those tools are used to the max. More machinery, more enhanced machinery or more capable machinery also enhances the position of the operator within the fraternity. However, what machinery is available is not actually their choice, is it? Ensuring the tools are available is not within the decision-making power of the operators. That power sits with the forest manager and the contractor. So what that means is that who controls the resources controls the wellbeing outcome. Most of the production resources are controlled by someone other than the operators. The two PCBUs controlling this work environment control the skid size, the truck capacity, the machine capacity, the recruitment and retention of operators, and the productive potential of the crew's culture. If production performance is left solely up to the operators, their only response can be to improve their skills and work longer. Now, bear in mind, this is all happening within a contract structure that is focused solely on efficiency and risk. The use of the least amount of resource cost to achieve the greatest amount of profit for the forest owner and contractor at the lowest levels of risk. So all parties, actually, operators included, have plenty of incentive to work for operators to work longer than what is healthy. They all consider in the short term that they'll win through that decision. Now that has a number of implications for anyone looking to improve wellbeing. Operator wellbeing needs to be an explicit performance goal of the logging system. The supply chain needs to be designed to get the work done within healthy operating hours. Recent evidence suggests that healthy operating hours are something like 55 hours a week, including travel. Secondly, contractor businesses need to be led in a way that ensures operator wellness. What that means was most clearly articulated by one of the participants when he described his own crew as a real tight-knit crew. What he refers to here is that the operators that he worked with were multi-skilled, so they could cover for each other. Job rotation happened naturally. Everyone knew the target, and they all had input into how the crew was going to organise itself to solve the myriad of problems they faced in meeting that target. And they were all paid well for meeting to achieve that. What these two implications point to is that the interests of the three actors in the field of logging, the contractor, the operator, the owner, the contractor, and the operator, they all need to have their interests aligned. And it's something that's not naturally achieved through the contracting structure, because that is set up around the interests of some having priority over the interests of others. However, there are forest managers, contractors, and operators who do operate with more aligned interests. And they do that firstly by prioritising well-being, although not in every case. But they primarily set up, for whatever reason, they set up an investing and operating environment that encourages and enables capital investment by their contractor, and then involve the operators in the decision-making processes about how that capital gets used. So in summary, operator wellbeing is dependent on there being sufficient capacity within the logging system to get the work done within healthy hours. Long hours are embedded by the distribution of power within the logging environment. Improving operator wellbeing means having to align the interests of the three actors in the logging field, so that there is an investment environment that enables investment in the tools that are required to get the job done within healthy hours, and that operators have significant input into the way that work is done. So that's it from me. If you're watching this on video and not in the conference at which is going to be presented tomorrow, then if you have comments or questions, feel free to contact me at this email address. Thanks heap. See ya.